For a look at this year's top stories in the wide world of sports, we bring in Stephen Brunt from our Sportsnet studios in Toronto. How's it going, Stephen?
Hey, Wilder.
All right, let's get started with the biggest sporting event of the year, obviously the Olympics. 10 years down the line, though, what will Canadians remember from the Sochi Games?
I think they'll remember some of the medalists. You know, the sad truth is we tend to forget a lot of our Olympic medalists, even though they're stars in the moment and we care about them more than anything during the Games. But I think people will remember the Dufour-Lapointe sisters. I think they'll remember Alex Bilodeau coming back and winning a gold medal after being the first gold medalist in Vancouver. I think they'll remember a very dramatic women's hockey victory and a completely undramatic men's hockey victory, a kind of a clinical victory by the men's hockey team. And I think probably, sad to say, they'll also remember Sochi as maybe the end of a certain line in terms of the Olympics, in terms of how the Olympics are staged. The massive, incredibly expensive Olympics, completely unjustifiable economically, and leaving behind essentially an Olympic ruin. That's not going to happen anymore, I don't think. We had the IOC at the end of the year saying we're going to change the rules about bids and about staging the games to make them more affordable. I think they realize this isn't sustainable. So something that's been going on and building for really the last 30 years, I think, comes to an end in Sochi.
Well, it's a little hard when you don't have Vladimir Putin fronting the bill.
Yes, yeah, no, it's tough to do that in a democracy, you're right.
Well, speaking of some other notorious names, then some of this year's biggest stories revolved around the commissioners of the major leagues. Think of Adam Silver's reaction to Donald Sterling or Roger Goodell suspending Ray Rice. What lesson do we take away from it all?
Well, I think in terms of Adam Silver and his swift action on the Donald Sterling matter, what we saw there was really player power. We saw the players in the National Basketball Association, the vast majority of whom are African Americans, standing up and saying, we are this game, we are this league, we don't want Donald Sterling involved in this league, we won't tolerate it. There's almost no precedent for that, Wilder. And what Adam Silver was doing was acknowledging a reality, which is that the players are the game, they matter, and it doesn't matter. You know, being the commissioner is in a lot of ways about protecting the game and looking after the game itself, and that is the players. So that was I think a landmark moment really in sports history. In terms of Roger Goodell, we saw something else, a guy who bumbled, you know, who really, I think, diminished the office of commissioner of the NFL, an office we always kind of looked up to as being infallible almost with the Rosells and the Tagliabues. He made a hash of the Ray Rice suspension. We all know what we think about Ray Rice. We all know what we felt when we saw that video. But the fact is, Roger Goodell acted arbitrarily. He wet his finger and put it up in the air to see which way the wind was blowing. And on that issue, on the issue of head injuries in the NFL and the issue of painkillers in the NFL, there's not a lot of credibility left in that commissioner's office, and Roger Goodell, I think, is diminished as we end this year.
You know, there's many feel-good stories, though, that came from last year as well, right? Stephen, what moments, I guess, will you remember the most?
Well, I'll tell you, I think my favorite story of the year, and I guess in some ways it didn't have a happy ending, we'll see, but I still remember draft day with Michael Sam. And that incredibly memorable television image of Michael Sam kissing his boyfriend when he found out he'd been drafted, first openly gay player to be drafted into the National Football League, into professional sports. And I think that image will resonate. I think it'll become ordinary as time goes on. And Michael Sam's not in football right now, I hope for football reasons. They just decided he wasn't good enough and not because he's gay. But that image of joy and of love and of happiness, I think is something that all of us are going to be thinking about down the road when, honestly, we're not going to think about it anymore. It's just going to be, there's the draft day story, there's somebody winning a championship, there's somebody with the person they love celebrating.
Stephen, thanks so much for all your insight this past year, shining a light on so many stories all over the sports world. Have a great holidays, and we'll see you next year.
Thanks, Wilder. Happy New Year.